Good morning. It's What's Up Wednesday here on CMajor Before The Show. Thank you so much. We are so happy to be with you. We're live. We didn't know if we were going to go live on a Wednesday, but we thought we would try something different. So if you're like me, you've just finished your breakfast and you're trying to figure out how you're going to navigate your day, and you have a few things on your calendar. And so we just wanted to reach out and just talk with you just for a few moments. I mean, we have some things on our mind about music making, and I was just reflecting on some of the fun and some of the enjoyable things that I did with my students when we were not all staying at home. And so I just wanted to reflect with you a little bit today. The last couple of days, if you've been with us, we've been talking about chords, and we talked about the C major chord at first, and then we just mentioned some more information about chords on Tuesday, and then here we are on Wednesday. So thank you so much for being here. And we're still feeling our way. If you've been paying attention to the news, you know that the stimulus package by the White House was signed, that the Senate leaders struck a major deal early this morning, and so now we have a $2 trillion package to help us all out. And I know my musician friends will be very happy about that. So applause and cheers for that. So interesting. You know, I don't normally comment on politics at all here on this podcast. This podcast is about piano lessons. So why would we? But it was just nice to read it. The quote was, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are done." And then they wrote a story about how they were there just right before 1 o'clock in the morning. And finally, since last Friday, they've been able to put together a deal. So if you are a musician and you're worried about how you're going to pay your bills, if you're a music teacher and you were laid off and you're teaching artist work, or if you're an independent contractor, whatever the case may be, maybe if you had a full-time job on the side and you were laid off in some way, you're probably wondering how you're going to pay your bills and to get back on the path to doing well. It seems that a lot of us were doing really well for a change in our music making, and then this happens. But the overall thought is to stay healthy, to stay safe. I would say that would be the overall consensus among my students, among teachers and parents, that they really are concerned about music making and wellness at this time. But just to give you some numbers, it's just so interesting. The $250 billion set aside will be given out for direct payments to individuals, to families, and then you have $350 billion in small business loans. So if you happen to be an independent contractor who also has a registered business, and some of my colleagues do have that situation, then that's the figure that's been reported. Also, if you applied for unemployment insurance, $250 billion in unemployment insurance benefits, and then $500 billion in loans for distressed companies. So I imagine that's a lot of the bigger companies that are out there. But check the figures for yourself. It's all over the news. It's actually pretty late in the morning now. It's a little bit after 10 a.m. Eastern time here in the greater New York area. And so we are just responding to the coronavirus crisis in the best way that we can. And I thought, just to lighten things a little bit, I would just reflect on some of the more fun and enjoyable times that I've had in music making, and just encourage you to make the best music that you can make until we get back to something near normal, which is what my students are hoping for. So the first thing I want to share and reflect on is my own practice with students that were studying music theory. Now, I know you're thinking in your mind, why did she start with music theory? Music theory is not fun, right? I have to add some laughter to that. But I think there are traditional ways of learning music theory, and there are some fun ways that you can learn music theory. Just check your internet, check the YouTube channel. It's all over the place. You have so many instructors out there claiming to be experts, and so e-learning is very popular right now. You can learn more about the instruments. You can try different instruments if you're trying to compose, and just listen to the creative outcomes of what happens when you're learning online. Easily playable, and it's easy to record different instruments, even if you've not learned that instrument before, especially if you're using music software or if you're using something on your iPad. Even if you have an iPad and you can connect to music technology through a platform such as GarageBand. So I have a few students that are into that. I think I posted an episode where I talked about, or at least gave a shout out to my students that were using GarageBand to compose their own music, and they were doing really, really well at it. In fact, I had a musician friend, that was one of the first things that he did with me. He sat down and said, okay, you know what? We're going to step away from the rehearsal floor for just a moment, and let's go into the studio, and let me show you some things that you can do with GarageBand, and really encouraged me to start focusing on looping and things like that. So I think in the future I will do a little bit more creativity with GarageBand. But if you know anything about my history, you know I used to work in professional audio, and so in a retail setting, and so I've met a lot of professionals who are very proficient in that field, and I've had the advantage of working with engineers. And let me say a little bit about that. You know, I hope I didn't give the wrong impression when I said that I use software to record my music, and I hope that the takeaway wasn't use it as a shortcut and not pursue the real thing. My message really was, if you're a pianist and you thought you had to sit down to a grand piano to record your piano project, I would just challenge you to think differently and use the advantages of software. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have to play. It just made me recall that back in undergrad, we had a professor who talked about two guys that got together and recorded everything just by clicking on a mouse, and they didn't play a note on the keyboard. And there was some Bach project that they did, and it turned out really, really well. And he was very impressed with that. They just basically did step entering with the mouse and was very successful with it. But if you know how to play a piano, play a keyboard, use a MIDI instrument, and then you just clean it up to make sure it's saying what you want it to say, it's expressing what you want to express. So some people may feel that's the quote-unquote cheaty way of recording, but I think it's very helpful, especially if you're on a budget. So again, something fun, something enjoyable that you can try out for yourself. And we're not going to talk too long. I know I can get a little winded, so I'm just going to say a couple of more things, and then we're going to say have a nice day. But I know I'm not out here by myself. I had a very rare opportunity a few months ago to witness a very huge figure in music education. He's an internationally renowned jazz pianist. He's a composer. He's a teacher himself. And even though he's much older now than what you see on the videos, the mostly videos that get posted about his teaching legacy, it was just nice to see this person in person. And it's when you realize how much these educators have paved the way that you have a lot of big shoes to fill, and you don't take that lightly. And to see that they're still having fun. So this professor began playing jazz in Detroit in the 1940s. He was absorbed into bebop, particularly the music of Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Bud Powell, Thelonious Monk. And it was because of him I started to really listen to the Thelonious Monk piece that he loves to play over and over with his students. And so I could hardly believe what I was witnessing, that he got to this age and he's still having fun with his students, and everybody loves to learn from him. And it just taught me a big lesson in that moment to always have fun with your students. Find a way to make it fun. Find a way to make it enjoyable. And although he's past that generation where you are into technology, that's mainly for the younger generation. But it was so interesting to see some of his students try to challenge him, because they could pull up right at the drop of a hat if he disputed something that they saw Monk do on the piano. Then they could dispute that by pulling up a video and say, hey, he was playing in this register on the piano, and kind of call him on it. So I thought, you know what? He would have never done that because of his age. He would have just listened to his teachers. But it was just really fun to visit his workshop. He not only does piano workshops, he does vocal workshops. He focuses on the complete aspects of music, including improvisation, harmonic movement, and theory. Just imagine, this is a master teacher who lectures in the United States and Holland, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, Japan, and now, even at his old age, holds weekly music workshop sessions in New York City. And it's for anyone that wants to come. You can be a vocalist, you can be a student of piano, other instruments. He just covers the whole spectrum of everything you want to know about music. And so I just wanted to reflect on some things that I've been able to do with my students, and also reflect on some things that I've learned from a master teacher who's in the greater New York area. So be encouraged, and we will plan to see you on tomorrow. Can you believe it? It's going to be Thursday, March 26th. So we'll probably talk a little bit more about chords. This week was a trial week for us to see what we could talk about and what we could share in just a fleeting moment on the internet. There's a lot of activity going on Twitter, all type of webinars that are coming out. So if you're a TuneCore artist, you probably got invited to some of that. And if you are just surfing the web at all, Instagram is lit right now with all type of DJ parties going on. But I'm going to sip my coffee, and I'm going to see you later. So have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I'll see you next time right here on CMajor Before The Show.